When Weston Adler's black McLaren rolled up the winding drive of the secluded villa in the Santa Ynez hills, he wasn't expecting to find a woman standing barefoot on the gravel with a broom in one hand and a death glare in the other. "You're 2 hours early," she said flatly, brushing a strand of hair out of her face with the back of her hand. "I haven't even finished mopping the kitchen." Weston stepped out of the car, sunglasses still on, the late afternoon sun glinting off the metal of his watch. "Didn't realize I needed an appointment to enter a property I paid 30 grand a week for," she blinked once. "And yet, you're still in my wet hallway." He tilted his head, taking her in. Messy bun, skin flushed from cleaning, no makeup, and a t-shirt that said, "I clean, therefore I swear," the opposite of every woman he knew in LA. "You're the housekeeper. I'm the person who's going to strangle you with a mop if you track dust onto my floor," she deadpanned. He laughed, then an actual laugh, not the forced polite one he used in meetings. "Noted." She turned on her heel and stormed back inside. He followed. The villa was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the hills like a painting, and the scent of lemon oil and something floral drifted through the air. "Just leave your shoes by the front," she said without looking at him. "And don't touch the shelves." "I just dusted them." Weston kicked off his shoes and watched her disappear into the kitchen, her ponytail bouncing with every step. "Do you always talk to guests like this?" She popped her head back around the corner. "Only the ones with an ego bigger than this villa." He grinned again. Her name, he found out later that evening, was Piper Whitlow. She was 27, ran her own boutique housekeeping company, and clearly had no clue who he was, which was refreshing, because Weston Adler was used to being recognized. He was the guy who built a tech company at 23, sold it for 9 figures, and now sat on 2 boards, invested in half the West Coast, and had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But here, in this villa, he was just the guy who hadn't wiped his feet. The next morning, Piper was already there when he came out of the bedroom wearing headphones, scrubbing the granite counters like they'd personally offended her. He cleared his throat. She didn't hear him. He cleared it again, louder, still nothing. So he touched her shoulder. She jumped 3 feet in the air and yanked out one of her earbuds. "Seriously?" "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all, "just wondering if you wanted coffee." She blinked. "You're asking me if I want coffee. I make a mean espresso." Piper looked at him like he might have grown a second head. "You know how to use a coffee machine better than I know how to mop." She cracked her first smile. It was small, but it was there. "Fine. Impress me, Espresso King." By the end of the 3rd day, they'd developed a rhythm. He worked from the sun-drenched patio with his laptop as she cleaned. They didn't talk much, but when they did, it was mostly her mocking him and him pretending not to enjoy it. But on the 5th day, things shifted. He was on a call, pacing, frustrated. A deal was going sideways and his voice was clipped and cold. Piper walked in with a basket of folded towels, paused, and gave him a look like he was growling at puppies. He ended the call, tossed his phone on the couch, and pinched the bridge of his nose. "You okay?" she asked. He looked up, surprised by the softness in her voice. "Yeah, just business." She set the towels down and leaned against the wall. "You look like someone just kicked your dog," he sighed. "Try a $10 million deal falling apart because some guy can't get his ego out of the way," she whistled. "You throw around numbers like I throw around Clorox," he chuckled. I forgot how ridiculous that sounded. She tilted her head. "So, what do you actually do? Besides pacing dramatically and drinking coffee," Weston hesitated. "Investments, startups, tech." She narrowed her eyes. "You're one of those Silicon Valley guys, aren't you? Guilty." "I should have known." "You've got that I own 5 pairs of the same expensive black t-shirt kind of vibe," he laughed. "I actually do." Piper shook her head, smiling as she grabbed the basket again. He watched her walk away. Something tugged in his chest. That night he couldn't sleep, not because of work. Because of her. The way her lips curled when she was being sarcastic, the way she didn't treat him like a walking wallet, the way she filled the villa with life even when she was quiet. He had no business thinking about her like this. She was just the housekeeper. Except she wasn't just anything. The next day, he brought home pastries from a French bakery in Santa Barbara. Piper arched a brow when he set the box on the counter. Trying to bribe me, trying to thank you, for what? For making this place feel like more than a rental. She looked at him for a long second. You're weird. I get that a lot, but she opened the box, took a croissant, ate half of it standing there, then said, okay. You're forgiven for showing up early. The next week passed in a blur of small moments. He brought her lunch from town. She taught him how to properly fold a fitted sheet, which ended in both of them laughing on the couch. He watched her dance around with a mop when she thought no one was watching. She caught him watching and hit him with said mop. And every night, he found himself thinking about Piper Whitlow way too much. Then came the night of the thunderstorm. It rolled in fast, loud, wild, shaking the windows. Piper was still there when the downpour started, standing by the doorway with her keys in hand. You probably shouldn't drive down the hill in that, he said from the living room. She glanced outside, then at him. You're not wrong, stay the night. Her eyes widened. Excuse me, in the guest room, he clarified, raising both hands. I'm not a total creep. She hesitated. It's safer, he added, and I make breakfast, she exhaled. Fine, but I get the big bathroom, he smiled. Deal? Later, he found her curled up on the couch in sweats, watching some cheesy crime show. He sat beside her. They didn't speak for a while, just listened to the rain, then she turned to him. Why are you here, in the villa? No, here alone, rich. Renting a place in the hills like you're hiding. He looked at her, unsure why he felt the urge to tell her the truth. My life got loud, too many people, too many motives, I needed quiet, she nodded slowly. Well, you found it, he looked at her. No, he said quietly. I found something else, she blinked. He stood. Good night, Piper, and left her sitting there, heart pounding. The morning after the storm, Piper padded into the kitchen wearing one of the villa's plush robes, her hair damp and tangled from sleep. She froze when she saw Weston already there, leaning against the counter with a French press and 2 mugs set out like it was his morning ritual. You're up early, she said, rubbing her neck where it had stiffened from the guest bed. He didn't look at her right away. Didn't sleep much. She poured herself a cup, wrapping her hands around it for warmth. Storm keep you up? No, he said, finally glancing at her. You did. She raised a brow. You talk in your sleep. Piper nearly choked on her coffee. Oh God. What did I say? Something about mayonnaise and a missing vacuum hose, Weston said, deadpan. She groaned. Please tell me you're joking. I could, but I won't. She laughed under her breath and took a long sip of coffee. I should head out soon. I've got another client across town. Weston's jaw ticked slightly. You work Sundays? It's a deep clean for a couple heading back from Europe. They want the place sparkling by tonight. He looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. She was halfway out the door when he said, Can I see you again? She turned. You're literally seeing me now. I mean outside of this house, not while you're holding a sponge. She hesitated for the first time. I don't date clients, she said, then fire me. Piper blinked. He stepped closer. I'm not asking for dinner, I'm asking for time. 20 minutes, a walk, coffee, anything. She studied him. The way his voice dropped when he was unsure, the way he didn't push harder but waited. Finally, she said, Fine, 1 walk, sunset, today. He nodded once. I'll pick you up. No need, I'll meet you at the Bluffs. Wear sneakers, he said. She rolled her eyes. You think I own anything else? When she was gone, Weston leaned back against the counter, his chest too tight, his thoughts too loud. He hadn't asked a woman out in over a year. Hadn't wanted to, but Piper had a way of making him forget how guarded he'd become. Later that day, he pulled up to the trailhead by the Bluffs, the sun low on the horizon, casting gold across the ocean. Piper was already there, sitting on the hood of an old navy blue car, legs crossed, arms resting on her knees. You're punctual, he said as he approached. You're late, she replied, hopping down. 3 minutes. Shall I beg for forgiveness? Try keeping up first, she said, already walking ahead. The trail wound along the cliffs, the ocean crashing below them. The breeze tugged at her hair and Weston found himself watching the way she moved, quick, sure, unafraid of the height. "You always hike alone?" he asked, stepping beside her. "Better than hiking with people who talk too much," she replied. He laughed. "Fair." They walked in silence for a moment before she asked, "Why me?" Weston glanced over. "What do you mean? You could be dating models, actresses, tech heiresses. But you're chasing a woman who wears bleach-stained leggings and listens to murder podcasts while scrubbing floors. So why me?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "Because you don't see me as a transaction. You don't ask me what I own or who I know. You look at me like a person, not a headline." She stopped walking then, the wind catching her hair. "I didn't know who you were," she said softly, "and I've never been more grateful." They sat on a flat rock near the edge, the sun dipping lower. Waves crashed below them and the sky shifted to amber. Piper pulled her knees to her chest. "My dad used to bring me here," she said, "before he passed." Weston turned his head slowly. "I was 16. He'd prop a sketchpad on his knee and draw waves while I looked for sea glass. It was our place." He didn't speak, just waited. "I stopped coming after he died," she said. "Too many ghosts, but tonight, it feels okay." He reached out, his hand brushing hers. "You make it feel okay," she added, barely above a whisper. For a moment, the only sound was the wind. Then Weston said, "My mom left when I was 7. Piper looked at him. She said she couldn't handle the pressure. "My dad tried to raise me alone, but he buried himself in work. I think that's why I chased success so hard. To prove I was worth staying for." Her expression softened as his words settled between them. They stayed there until the sky turned violet. When they stood, Piper didn't pull her hand away from his. Back at the trailhead, neither moved to leave. "I'm glad you asked," she said. He smiled. "I'm glad you said yes." That night, Weston didn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't restlessness, it was hope. The next few days stretched long. Piper texted him for the first time, nothing romantic, just a picture of a mangled mop with the caption, "R.I.P. Gerald." He died doing what he loved. He laughed alone in his living room, then sent back a photo of the villa's sink full of dishes with the caption, "Gerald's sacrifice was in vain." Their banter didn't stop there. He invited her to a wine tasting at a vineyard overlooking the valley. "I can't afford those," she said when he asked. "I didn't ask if you could," he replied. She wore a simple sundress and sneakers, and when they arrived, Weston noticed every head turned toward her. She didn't notice. She was too busy marveling at the way the vines curled around the terrace railing. "You've been here before?" she asked. "Only in another life," he said. They wandered the rows of grapes, laughing over the sommelier's overly poetic descriptions. "Hints of leather and crushed violet," Piper muttered. "Tastes like wine." Weston nearly spit out his drink. Later, as they walked along the edge of the vineyard, she asked, "Is this what your life is always like?" He hesitated. "It used to be." "What changed, you?" She didn't answer, but her fingers found his again. The next day, Weston was in the middle of a call when his assistant buzzed in. "There's someone here to see you, says it's personal." He stepped into the lobby of the downtown office and froze. Piper stood there, arms crossed, holding a manila envelope. "What's going on?" he asked. She handed it to him. "I found these behind the villa's credenza. They looked important." He opened the file. Legal documents, contracts, his signature, some from months ago. "I didn't want to leave them with the property manager," she said. "Figured it'd be safer with you." He studied her face. "You drove an hour just to hand me this," she shrugged. "Didn't trust the mail." He stepped closer. "Or maybe you missed me." "Maybe I missed Gerald," she said, but her eyes betrayed her. He reached for her hand. "Come upstairs." She hesitated. "You're working?" "I want you to see what I do." Inside his office, she stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out over the city. "It's a long way from bleach and vacuum hoses," she murmured. "You think I'm out of reach?" he asked. "I think you're orbiting another planet." He stepped behind her, his voice low. "Then pull me down." She turned to face him. "I'm scared," she said. "So am I," he whispered. They didn't kiss. "Not yet." But the space between them was charged, like striking a match in a room full of gas, and neither of them wanted to leave. Weston hadn't planned the dinner, not really. But somehow it came together fast. One phone call to a private chef, another to a florist, and his evening was suddenly wrapped in candlelight and the scent of fresh rosemary and citrus. The villa, usually serene and spare, glowed with warmth. String lights stretched across the back terrace, swaying gently in the breeze. A small table had been set with hand-blown glassware and pale linen napkins. He didn't usually care about details like that, but this wasn't a usual evening. When Piper arrived, she froze halfway through the French doors. Her eyes flicked from the flickering candles to the single white gardenia tucked into the linen napkin at her place setting. "That's a lot of effort for someone who couldn't remember to use a coaster 3 days ago," she said, stepping forward. "I remember important things," Weston replied, pulling her chair out. She sat slowly. "Like what?" He poured her a glass of wine before answering. "Like the way you prefer your salad dressed on the side because you hate soggy lettuce." Piper blinked. "And how you always chew on your straw when you're nervous, and how you hum when you're concentrating off-key but endearing." Her voice was quiet. "You notice all that? I notice everything about you." The chef, a quiet man in his 60s, brought out the first course and quickly disappeared again. Piper stared down at the plate grilled peaches over burrata and arugula. She didn't touch it. "I don't know how to do this," she said. He leaned in slightly. "Do what?" "This," she gestured between them. "The candlelight, this kind of attention. I'm used to plastic takeout containers and falling asleep with my phone in my hand. I'm not asking you to change." "No," she said, "but I'm not sure I fit into your world." Weston set his fork down. "Then we'll build our own." She looked up sharply. "I'm serious," he continued. "I've spent years in rooms full of people who say all the right things and mean none of them. You show up in leggings and tell me I'm tracking dirt across your floor. It's the most real thing I've ever had." Piper exhaled and reached for her wine. "You're going to ruin me, Weston Adler," he tilted his head, "or I might save you." She didn't respond, but her hand brushed his across the table and stayed there. After dinner, they moved inside. The fire was already lit, crackling quietly. She sat on the edge of the couch, shoes kicked off, fingers playing with the hem of her cardigan. "I've been thinking about something," she said. Weston sat beside her, keeping a slight distance. "You said you wanted quiet," she continued. "That people were too loud, too demanding. But I don't think you came here to disappear." He looked at her. "No, I think you came here to be seen, just by the right person." He didn't speak because the truth of that landed too hard in his chest. "I see you, Weston," she added, softer. He reached for her hand. "And I'm not going anywhere." They didn't kiss, not yet, but they sat there long after the fire burned down to embers. The next morning, Piper was already gone when he woke. A note sat on the counter in her loose handwriting. "Had to open up a new property, see you tonight." He smiled as he tucked it into his wallet. That evening, he picked her up in a vintage convertible he hadn't driven in years. She raised an eyebrow as she slid into the passenger seat. "What is this, a movie?" "Just a drive," he said. They wound through the hills, past vineyards and olive groves until they reached a quiet overlook. The sun was setting again, casting the valley in gold. "Do you ever stop long enough to enjoy what you've built?" she asked as they sat on the hood. "I didn't build it for me," he said. "I built it to outrun things." "Did it work?" "For a while." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "And now I want to stop running." She turned to look at him, and this time he kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It was fierce, like something that had been waiting far too long. Her hands curled into his shirt and his fingers slid into her hair, anchoring her as the wind swept around them. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "That was overdue." He grinned. "Agreed." Over the next week, everything changed. Piper kept working. She insisted on it, but her schedule began to bend around his. They'd meet for lunch in town, sometimes in the back room of a bakery where he swore the croissants were better than Paris. At night, they'd cook together, arguing over seasoning and laughing until they forgot what they were even making. He brought her little things. Not expensive ones, just thoughtful. A bookmark carved with her initials. A playlist burned onto a USB drive with songs she'd mentioned once. A tiny velvet pouch of sea glass, like the ones she used to collect with her dad. One night they lay on the hammock behind the villa, her head on his chest, stars scattered above them. "I want to believe this is real," she said. "It is. But what happens when you go back to your world? I bring you with me." She didn't answer right away. "I'm not built for that kind of life," she finally said. Fancy parties, people with agendas, pretending to care about stock portfolios and rooftop launches. "You wouldn't have to pretend." "But I'd feel like I was pretending," she said. He turned, propping himself up on an elbow. "Then we make something different. Something that's ours. You make it sound easy, it's not, but loving you is." Her breath caught, and he saw it right there in her eyes, the first crack in her walls. Then came the gala he hadn't planned on going. But a charity he'd supported for years had asked, and it was honoring a cause close to his heart. He didn't want to go without her. When he asked, Piper immediately shook her head. "I don't own anything that belongs in a room like that. Let me take care of it." "I'm not a project, Weston. I know that," he said. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to treat you the way someone should have a long time ago." She hesitated. "One night," he nodded. "One night." The next day, a dress arrived. Midnight blue, sleek, elegant. She stared at it for a long time before finally trying it on. When she stepped out that evening, Weston was waiting by the car in a tailored tux. The moment he saw her, his expression shifted, something reverent, quiet. "You're staring," she said. "You're impossible not to." The event was at a museum in the city. Crystal chandeliers, champagne trays, and whispers that followed him wherever he moved. Piper stayed close but didn't cling. She watched, listened, learned. When people asked how they met, she simply said, "He tracked mud through my hallway." Everyone laughed. Weston didn't correct her. Later, on the rooftop, she leaned on the railing, looking out over the skyline. "I don't belong here," she said quietly. "You belong with me." She turned. "That's not the same." "No," he agreed. "It's better." He reached into his jacket, her breath caught. "Weston, it's not what you think," he said, pulling out a small box. Inside wasn't a ring, it was a key. "To the villa?" she asked. "No," he said. "To my place in the city. I want you to have it. No pressure, no expectations, just a door that will always open for you." She stared at it. "I'm not asking you to move in," he clarified, "or change anything. I just want you to know that wherever I am, there's space for you." She held the key like it weighed more than gold. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." She nodded slowly. "Okay." As they drove back that night, neither of them spoke much. But when they reached the villa, Piper didn't get out right away. She turned to him. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," Weston said, "but I've never wanted anything more." She leaned over and kissed him slow, deep, certain. He didn't need words after that. Not when everything they needed to say had been sealed in that kiss. Piper hadn't planned on staying the night at the villa, but dawn found her wrapped in a blanket on the back terrace, barefoot, hair tousled, a half-empty mug of tea beside her. The hills unfurled in early morning silence, golden and hushed. The world looked different from up here, cleaner, quieter, like it hadn't yet decided what kind of day it wanted to be. She didn't hear Weston approach, but she felt him before he spoke. "You always sit like you're waiting for something," he said, gently sliding a sweatshirt over her shoulders. "I'm listening," she replied, "for whatever comes next." He sat beside her, balancing a second mug on his knee. "I have to fly to New York tomorrow," he said after a pause. "Board meeting." "Just 2 days." Piper didn't turn to him. "And after that, I want to come back here with you." She finally looked at him. "You always talk like the future is something you can buy." "I used to think it was," he said. "Now I know it's something you ask for." She didn't answer, but her hand found his under the blanket. Weston left the next morning. Piper stayed. She kept the villa clean, but she didn't scrub the windows or polish the wood floors. She let the place breathe the way he had started to. She walked the trails behind the property in the evenings, barefoot, letting the dirt cling to her skin. She opened the windows at night, letting the wind curl through the rooms like a whisper. When he called from the tarmac after landing back in California, his voice was quiet. "I missed you." "I know," she said, watching the sky turn purple behind the hills. "I missed me too." He drove straight from the airport to the villa, arriving just after sunset. The moment he stepped through the front door, Piper was there. "I didn't clean," she said before he could speak. "Good," he replied. "I didn't come back for polished floors." That night, they didn't talk about the city or the board or anything that waited outside the hills. They lay on the floor of the living room, listening to old vinyl records Weston had found in the back closet, jazz and soul and things neither of them could name. Piper rested her head on his chest. "You know what scares me?" she said softly. He ran his fingers along her shoulder. "Tell me that I'll wake up in a few months and realize this was just a season." Weston's voice was low. "Then let's make it permanent." She sat up slowly. "I mean it," he said, rising to meet her eyes. "I'm not interested in temporary." "Not with you?" She didn't speak, and the silence stretched long between them. Then she asked, "Would you really walk away from all of it? The city, the deals, the noise?" "I don't need to walk away," he said. "I just need to reprioritize." She narrowed her gaze. "That's a very CEO way to frame love." He smiled gently. "Maybe, but I know what I want, Piper, and it's not just you in this villa, it's you beside me, wherever we are." The next morning, they drove into town together, her first time in the passenger seat of his McLaren. She kept her hands tucked into her lap, eyes on the road. "I have to stop at the cleaners," she said. "And then a supply run for a client opening a guest house on the coast." "I'll come with you." She turned. "You want to run errands. I want to be where you are." They stopped in front of a squat building with a faded awning and a chime that rang when the door opened. The woman behind the counter lit up when she saw Piper. "You're back. I saved that lavender bag you like." As Piper chatted, Weston drifted through the small shop, examining faded photographs and hand-sewn aprons hanging from a rack. He touched nothing, but he noticed everything. When they returned to the car, Piper looked at him. "You looked out of place in there." "I was, but I liked it." Later, as they walked through the aisles of a supply store, he pushed the cart while she loaded it with microfiber cloths, lemon oil, and a brand of gloves she insisted were the only kind that didn't tear. "You really love what you do," he said, watching her compare sponges. "I love the control," she replied. "When life gets messy, at least I can scrub something clean." He leaned in. "I'm not clean, Piper," she smiled faintly. "I don't want clean. I want real." Back at the villa, she found a note tucked into the fridge. It wasn't long. Just a sentence, written in his strong, deliberate handwriting. "Let me build a life with you." She folded it and slipped it into her pocket without a word. 2 nights later, Weston invited her to dinner again, but not at the villa. "I want to show you something." She followed him up a winding road she'd never noticed before, deeper into the hills until they reached a gate flanked by ivy-covered stone. "What is this?" she asked as the gate opened. He didn't answer. The car coasted up a long drive, revealing a house unfinished, quiet, lit only by construction lanterns and moonlight. It was skeletal in places, but the bones were beautiful. Tall windows, wide porches, a line of olive trees just beginning to take root. "I bought this land years ago," Weston said, stepping out and opening her door. "Thought I'd build a place to escape to, never got around to finishing it until now." She stepped inside. The air smelled like cedar and plaster. The walls were bare, but the layout was open and warm. A fireplace beckoned at the center, and beyond that, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the valley. "I want to finish it," he said. "With you." She turned slowly. "Weston, I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow. I'm asking for something real, something we shape together." Her voice was quiet. "You're serious." "I've never been more." She walked to the windows, letting her fingers touch the cool glass. "I don't need a big house," she said. "I need someone who doesn't run when things aren't shiny." "I won't run." She looked at him. "Then ask me." He crossed the room, took her hands in his, and dropped to one knee. There was no crowd, no fanfare, just timber and dust and moonlight. I don't want a future that doesn't have you in it. Marry me, Piper." She stared at him. Then, without hesitation, she dropped to her knees too, facing him. "Yes." He slid a ring onto her finger, simple, stunning, a single stone set in gold. Her hands trembled as she looked at it. "I never imagined this," she whispered. "I didn't either," he said. "And that's how I know it's real." They sat there for a long time, kneeling on the unfinished floor of a house that would soon be theirs. Weeks passed, plans were drawn, contractors returned. Piper's touch was everywhere: soft corners, warm woods, natural light. Weston let go of board seats he no longer believed in. He took fewer flights. He started a small foundation quietly in his father's name. She moved into the city apartment briefly, but they spent most nights at the villa, watching the house on the hill slowly become a home. The night before they left the villa for good, they lay on the floor again, the record player humming behind them. "You changed everything," Weston said. She turned toward him. "I didn't change you. You just stopped hiding," he nodded. And in the morning they left the villa together. Not as millionaire and housekeeper, but as two people who had found something neither of them had been looking for. Love that didn't care where you came from, only where you were going, and they were going forward, together. The house on the hill came to life slowly, but each change felt like a step towards something real. Piper stood barefoot in the new kitchen, a paintbrush in one hand and blue tape wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet. Sunlight streamed in through the tall windows, catching the dust she hadn't swept up yet, but for once she didn't care. Weston ducked in from the porch, a folded blueprint under his arm. His tie was gone, his sleeves rolled, and his shoes were muddy. He looked nothing like the man who once closed million-dollar deals with a voice so calm it could chill a room. He looked like someone who had decided to stay. "I told the contractor we're keeping the exposed beams," he said, setting the plans on the counter. "I figured you would," she replied without looking up. "You've been staring at them like they're art." "They are." He walked over and brushed a streak of paint from her cheek with his thumb. She didn't move. "You're doing that thing again," she said. "What thing?" Looking at me like I'm a miracle instead of someone who forgot to eat lunch. He tugged her hand gently and led her out to the porch, where a small table had been set with 2 sandwiches, a jar of lemonade, and a bowl of strawberries. "Eat," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "Did you do all this?" she asked, sitting. "I bribed the site manager with playoff tickets to help me carry the table." She smiled against the rim of her glass. "So this is your life now? Bribing people to feed your fiancé?" "I'd bribe the world if it meant seeing you smile at me like that." Piper didn't answer, but her fingers brushed his under the table and her shoulders relaxed. That night, Weston lay awake beside her in the half-finished master bedroom, the walls still unpainted and the mattress resting on the floor. Outside, the wind moved through the olive trees. She breathed deeply beside him, her bare back warm against his chest. "You're quiet," she murmured, not opening her eyes. "I was thinking, dangerous." He ran his hand slowly down her spine. "I think I want to be done chasing." She blinked against the pillow. "You already said you were." "No," he said. "I told you I was slowing down, but I think I want to stop." "Completely?" Piper rolled over to face him. "You'd really walk away from all of it?" "I don't need to prove anything anymore," he said. "Not to investors, not to the press, not to myself. I thought I'd feel lost without it, but I feel lighter." She laced their fingers together. "What would you do instead?" "I've been thinking about starting something small. Local. A mentorship program for kids who want to get into tech but don't have the access, not involving flashy software or IPOs, just real work, real people." Her eyes searched his. "That sounds like something that matters." "I want to matter in the right ways now." Piper kissed his knuckles. "You already do." The next morning, she left early to meet a client, a single mom trying to turn her garage into a rental unit to help make ends meet. Piper had offered to do the clean-up for half her usual rate and had brought supplies from her own stock. Weston watched her go, barefoot and purposeful, her ponytail bouncing behind her. He didn't stop her. He never would. Later that week, she returned to the villa, now fully theirs, to find a long box on the kitchen island. She eyed it suspiciously. "Please don't let this be another espresso machine," she muttered, lifting the lid. Inside was a wide, shallow frame. Her sea glass collection, the one she'd kept in a chipped jar for years, had been arranged by color and size, mounted under glass. In the corner, a small brass plaque read, "Found pieces, like us." She blinked rapidly and sat down. When Weston walked in 10 minutes later, she was still staring at it. "You're supposed to hang it," he said gently. "I don't want to stop looking at it." He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I wanted to give you something that won't fade or die or need charging." "It's perfect," she whispered. "And now I feel dumb for getting you socks." "I love the socks. They have avocados on them, even better." Later that night, they hosted their first dinner in the finished house. It wasn't a party. Just a few close friends: Weston's assistant, the chef from the villa, Piper's best friend from the cleaning company, and the contractor who'd somehow become part of their daily rhythm. The table wasn't fancy. The food was simple. But the laughter came easy, and Piper didn't flinch when someone asked how they met. "I told him off for walking through my clean floors," she said, grinning. "And I fell in love instantly," Weston added. She nudged his elbow under the table, but she didn't correct him. After everyone left, she walked barefoot through the house, touching the walls, running her fingers along the windowsills, pausing in doorways. "You okay?" Weston asked, leaning against the frame of the kitchen. "I used to think love was something that came in like a storm," she said. "Loud, fast, unstoppable. And now I think it's something you build, one room at a time." He crossed to her. "Then let's finish the house." She pulled him close. "We already did." 3 weeks later, they stood in front of the courthouse in Santa Barbara. No fanfare, no photographers. Just Piper in a pale blue dress with her hair pinned up, and Weston in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled. Their vows were whispered. "Honest. Raw. I swear I'll never try to fix you," she said. "Only hold you while you heal yourself." He took her hand. "I swear I'll never ask you to be quiet. I want to hear the whole truth, even when it's hard." They kissed before the officiant told them to, and no one cared. Afterward, they walked barefoot on the beach, shoes in hand, the hem of her dress soaked with salt water. Weston picked up a smooth stone and handed it to her. "For the new garden," he said. She tucked it into the pocket of her dress. They didn't go on a honeymoon. They didn't need one. They had the house and the garden and the wind moving through the trees. Months passed. The mentorship program launched quietly, hosted in a repurposed barn near the edge of the property. Piper's business expanded slowly, not because she chased growth, but because word of mouth carried her farther than she expected. She trained new staff, hired 2 single moms, started taking weekends off. One evening, Weston found her in the garden, her hands deep in the soil, planting lavender around the edge of the path. "You've got dirt on your face again," he said. She looked up. "It's where I'm happiest." He crouched beside her. "Then I'll meet you there." That night, they lay on the porch swing, the sky full of stars. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't shown up early to the villa?" she asked. "No," he said. "Why not?" "Because if I hadn't found you then," he said, "I would have found you another way." "Some people are inevitable." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Inevitable," she repeated. They stayed like that until the sky turned silver, and in the quiet between the wind and the trees, Piper whispered the words that had once terrified her to speak. "I'm home," and Weston, eyes closed, hand holding hers, answered without hesitation. "So am I."